Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Orlando. I'm Sean Buck. I'm the newly appointed president of the National Training and Simulation Association, headquartered up in Arlington, Virginia. But we do a lot of work down here in Orlando, obviously, in the modeling and simulation world. On behalf of myself and my team of small staff, as well as our huge volunteer force, and on behalf of my boss, the Honorable David Norquist, who's the CEO and president of the National Defense Industrial Association, welcome. Welcome to ITSIC 2024. We're really happy to have you here, and we hope that you get a lot out of your attendance this week. So, like some of you all, in fact, if I may see a show of hands, how many people, this is your first ITSIC? All right, I'm not alone. So this is my first ITSIC. I came aboard NTSA in early June of this year. So I've been heavily involved in the final 6 months of the planning and preparation and are well aware of what it takes to pull off a conference like this.
It might be locked.
But I'm really excited to be joined by our guests on stage who are not new. In fact, they're very seasoned veterans here at ITSIC. And I'm excited to hear what you all have to say and share with the audience this morning. This is the first special event of this ITSIC, but I want to give you a little bit of background about who these gentlemen, what they do as one of their responsibilities as members of Congress. They are members of the Congressional Modeling and Simulation Caucus up on the Hill. It was formed back in 2005 by Representative Scott and Representative Randy Forbes. When it was formed and with its intent, which the intent continues to be a bipartisan caucus that's focused on all the modeling and simulation technologies. So along with the caucus, NTSA supports different venues around the country all throughout the year, representing the technologies that are available and the capabilities available to improve our national defense and give the warfighter the most capability, both when they train and prepare, as well as when they fight. So I asked myself, why is this particular session so important? I came up with 3 reasons. First of all, as we're very well aware, a significant portion of our sales in this industry are based on government funding, both to the Department of Defense as well as many other federal agencies. Second, we're going to have time this morning together live to talk to one another, collaborate, share notes, and listen to what the representatives have to say as far as their point of view on modeling and simulation, but also representing their constituencies from their respective districts. And third, this obviously can be a jumping off point, a starting point, especially for those of you all who are attending for the first time, to start a dialogue and better appreciate what's needed from the folks out in the world. And we can hear from you all where you need help up on the Hill to further your efforts in your respective companies. So this morning, the format is meant to be a dialogue. And what we're going to do to inform that, we want it to be somewhat informal. I believe, as I understand it, in your seats or near your seats, you were afforded a white question card. And in these first 15 or 20 minutes, if you would like to contribute a question to be asked of our guests, please fill that card out, pass it to some of the men and women that are walking here in the room. They'll bring them up to me, and that's how we'll include you into the dialogue and make it as enriching as possible. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. After I'm done with the introductions, they'll have a chance for opening remarks, and then we'll get to probably the most important part of the session, which is the questions and answers. So our first member on the Congressional Modeling and Simulation Caucus to introduce is Congressman Bobby Scott. As I said a moment ago, in 2005, he co-founded the caucus with the intent to remain bipartisan, which to this day it remains. Since the inception of this special event at ITSIC, he has missed only 1 year. Well done, sir. Very well done. Great attendance. He remains a stalwart supporter of this industry and sponsors and supports legislation each year for modeling and simulation. Congressman Scott has represented Virginia's 3rd Congressional District in the U.S. House since 1993. Prior to his service in Congress, he served 15 years in the Virginia General Assembly. He also served our country in the National Guard and the United States Army Reserve. Currently, he's the ranking member of the Committee on Education and the Workforce, his 5th term as the committee's Democratic leader. In this role, he has advanced legislation that improves equity in education, frees students from the burdens of debt, protects and expands access to affordable health care, and ensures workers have a safe workplace. Congressman Scott, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sean, and thank everyone for being here. You know, when you give me credit for co-founding, you have to put that in perspective. I actually ran into Randy Forbes at the airport when on the flight up here, and I said, "Randy, you're going back to ITSEC?" He said, "ITSEC?" I said, "No, I'm going to Orlando with my grandchildren." But he did say, asked me to extend greetings to ITSEC on his behalf. He was the original founder. He needed it to be bipartisan, couldn't find a Democrat, so he asked me to sign up. And I said, "Okay, I'll sign up." And what am I signing up for? And so I've been given credit for being the founder ever since. But it is a pleasure to be here. I wrote some remarks before the election. Reminds me of the guy who went into a restaurant, had a meal, came out, and somebody had painted his car bright yellow. And so he went back in, banged on the table, got everybody's attention. "I got something to say to whoever painted my car bright yellow." And some huge, grizzly, mean-looking dude stepped right in front of him and said, "I did it. Now what you got to say?" He looked up and said, "I just wanted to let you know that the first coat of paint is dry and it's ready for the second coat." So I had to change my remarks a little bit after the election. But the caucus gets together to try to educate the members of the potential of modeling and simulation. We have conferences. You came to Washington earlier this year, and the theme was resilience. That is a big deal. In my hometown area of Hampton Roads, we are the biggest, most vulnerable to sea level rise of anything in the United States other than New Orleans. And so resilience is a really big deal. We're in the process of developing a digital twin to Hampton Roads so that we can figure out what effect flooding would have, what areas are most vulnerable, and that kind of thing. We've also been working on, the caucus has been making sure that we encourage modeling and simulation in legislation we pass. In a transportation bill, we make sure that there are directives to make sure that you use modeling and simulation to the degree practicable to make sure that we're designing programs most efficiently, save money, and save lives. The Homeland Security bill right now has in it an emergency preparedness network. We haven't finished our appropriations, as many of you well know. We haven't finished our appropriations for this year. But if we pass it, the bill as it is now, the emergency preparedness network will be there to help train people to make sure that the training is there and we're prepared for emergencies. And finally, let me just mention the grant program, the modeling simulation grant program for higher education. It passed about 2008, something like that. And the first grant didn't go out until about 3 years ago when I became chair of the committee. Then they started paying attention to me. And we got some grants to go out to make sure that if you're trying to develop a modeling and simulation course, you can get the equipment, that kind of thing. And also encourage all of the colleges and universities that have modeling and simulation programs to try to get together to get some conformity. So if you graduate with a particular degree from one college, other colleges will know what you learned, and there'll be some commonality. only a few grants went out, but over the last year, we made sure the Department of Education did significant outreach, and many more grants went out in the last year, and hopefully will even more going forward. So with that, let me stop and look forward to your questions.
Super.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Welcome again. Second, I'd like to welcome Congressman John Rutherford, serving his 4th term in the U.S. House. He's a good friend of mine and of this industry. He sits on the House Ethics Committee and the House Appropriations Committee, where he serves on 3 subcommittees: Homeland Security, Military Construction and Veterans Affairs, and Transportation and Housing and Urban Development. Congressman Rutherford began his career in law enforcement in 1974 as a patrolman in the Jacksonville, Florida Sheriff's Office, where he worked his way up to eventually serve as the sheriff. In 2003, 2007, and 2011, Congressman Rutherford was elected sheriff of Duval County, and for 12 years brought homicide and overall violent crime in Jacksonville to a 40-year low. He also served as the chair of the Legislative Committee for the Florida Sheriff's Association, where he advocated before the state legislature for policies that strengthened constitutional rights, supported our law enforcement, and enhanced public safety across the entire state of Florida. Please join me in welcoming Congressman John Rutherford.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Admiral, and it's great to see you again, and congratulations on your new position.
Thank you.
And look forward to the great things there. You know, I will tell you one of the sayings that I used to have when I was sheriff was about vision. And vision without action is just daydreaming, right? But action without vision is chaos. And so I want to congratulate ITSEC, because I believe that what you are doing and what you have been striving to do is actually to create a vision for where we can go with modeling, simulation in this whole world. And I have to tell you, I had an opportunity, my district director, Chris Miller, and I had a great opportunity. Thankfully, I live very close to Orlando. And a lot of the synergy that is being created within this field is located here in Orlando. And so we were able to come down. I visited with Mass Virtual, and I can tell you, going into that extended reality landscape is truly amazing. We had an incredible visit with them, learning about where they are going, where they have been actually. Because one of the things that just amazed me was when you go into their extended reality landscape, it's not all pristine. I was struck by the fact that when I virtually went up into the wheel well of I think it was an E2D or something, it was dirty and greasy and scratched. You know, it looked real, and that's one of the things that they're striving for. And so, having been a training center director actually for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office for several years during my career going through the ranks, one of the things that I learned through, how many of you remember the old FAT system? It was a firearms training system. Wow. They used to call it FATs. And we actually used that in a courtroom to clear an officer of a shooting decision that he had to make. He had to make it very quickly. And we simulated through the FAT system, and this was back in the 80s. We actually simulated through the FAT system how quickly officers have to make shoot, don't shoot decisions, and we were able to use that to get a no bill against this officer. And so, you know, for many years, I've understood the real impact that what you all do in this room can have on people's lives in their workplace and out of their workplace. And so I'm very appreciative of all that you do. And as an appropriator, you know, I also want to see us get the best bang for our buck. You know, and one of those is when we can train in a virtual world, save dollars, save lives, quite frankly, that's where I want to be. And so I want to challenge all of you. I mentioned Mass Virtual, and also I will tell you, we went to the National Cyber Range Complex. We actually received a briefing there, and I will tell you, that was a great opportunity to learn more about modeling and simulation and training. And so those of you that, look, I'm willing to travel anywhere in this country. I want to know what you're doing so that we can better create a vision together, and we can help you in your interactions with Homeland Security, particularly in my stead, but also transportation, housing, urban development. The field is wide open. And so I can tell you, those one-on-one opportunities with growing businesses that are going to be the future of this industry, I want to partner with you and reach out like Mass Virtual and some of these other companies. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Great offer to everyone in the audience. Third person I'd like to introduce up on the stage today is Congressman Jack Bergman. Congressman Bergman serves the 1st District of Michigan, which includes the beautiful Upper Peninsula and a large portion of the Lower Peninsula, approximately, as I understand it, 44% of the land mass of the state. Like I said earlier, he's no stranger to ITSEC, as he retired from the United States Marine Corps, rising to the rank of Lieutenant General. During his time in uniform as a Marine, he visited ITSEC to review technologies that could help the Marines that he served better prepared for their missions. After retiring from the Marine Corps, Congressman Bergman enjoyed a second career of 22 years as a commercial airline pilot. During this time, also, he started multiple small businesses in medical technology. In his service today, he is the highest-ranking combat veteran to have ever served in the U.S. House. He has co-sponsored legislation, along with Bobby Scott, in support of medical simulation and training technologies for the Department of Defense. As with Bobby Scott, you will find a staunch supporter of our industry and of the technologies that can support our nation's safety and security. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Admiral. You know, as I look out in the room here, how many of you have been to this panel before? Okay, it means, I guess we need to try some new humor material, Bobby. You guys have heard all our one-liners. But we are blessed to live in the country that we live in, whether we were born here, whether we emigrated here, whatever it happens to be. And with that blessing comes the responsibility to always do the right thing for the right reason. Now, how many of you here claim any ties to Michigan? Okay, how many of you here claim any ties to Ohio? Well, the point is, that we, those of us who watch the game, by the way, I'm married to a Spartan, so I don't have a dog in this fight, okay? Just so you know. But on Saturday, we watched a game that was well played, very passionately played, and it had, like all games do, it had an outcome. The clock ran to 0, and there was a score. But there was a sadness at the end of the game for the activity that occurred on the field, both players, some fans, coaches, whatever it happens to be. And I would suggest to you, as a country, we're better than that. So in the Michigan-Ohio rivalry, like one of many that occur on the sports arena, By the way, I played D3 football and baseball. And I was a D-back in football, okay? And I loved to hit people. I really did. It gave me pleasure to knock somebody down because that was the rules of the game, okay? But it was a clean hit. And what I was taught, and by the way, my high school football coach was a World War II Guadalcanal Marine, okay? He also liked to hit people, okay? And that's how I learned in high school. That's what you do. You have your position, you know the rules, and you execute your position as passionately, as vigorously as possible. The point is, what I learned growing up, when I had to knock an opponent down in the field of play, the first thing I did after knocking them down was to extend a hand to help them up. Okay, we need more of that. So I would suggest to you that wherever you go after this, and there was some things this weekend in more than one count, that we're better than the behavior we saw. Now I'm off my soapbox here for that. I had to get that off my chest. And my wife says last night, well, just burden the people in the audience with it. Put it onto them. But let's celebrate winning. Let's celebrate competition. And those of you who make things and are developing new products, well, I believe what our role is as the federal government is to create the environment where good, healthy competition is people who are developing new products, developing new iterations, whatever it happens to be, that in the modeling and simulation arena, you have the environment where you can do that. And have then those decision makers at the governmental level not slow down the innovation process. Because one of the things we've gotten in the last 2+ years is a real free look at the nature of warfare as we look at Ukraine. And to an extent, you know, in the Middle East as well, but more when we think about the use of drones, when we think about different things. And you all right now, I'm sure there are many of you up in here who have ideas of advancing our warfighting capability. And there's only one goal in war, and that's to win. That is, and that's different rules on the battlefield than it is on the playing field. But I'll close my comments with saying that everything costs money. And Bobby and I sit on, not only are we on this caucus together, but we both sit on the budget committee. And we think every day, the Democrats and Republicans who are on that committee, think about the cost of doing business. And where do we have to make governmental change in how we do the budgeting process so that it reflects the reality of the wise investment of taxpayers' dollars, mainly. So having said that, I'm glad to be here with you. I'm looking forward to the questions because, and by the way, there's one of 3 answers to any question if I get asked. Here's what I know, no baloney. I don't have a clue, but I'll find out. Or number 3, because this last cycle, I've had the gavel on intel and special ops. You could potentially ask me a question that this room is not cleared for. So I hope you would respect if I just say we can't discuss that in here. So I wanted to set the ground rules for you as far as questions that might be asked. So thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks, sir. It's my honor to also introduce our 4th guest, Congressman Darren Soto. I don't think any stranger to a lot of people locally here in Orlando. Congressman Soto was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 2016, representing Florida's 9th Congressional District. This district borders the convention center where we're sitting right this second. Congressman Soto started his career in private practice as an attorney, practicing family law, real estate law, and civil litigation. Currently in his 4th term in the U.S. House, Congressman Soto has established himself as a strong advocate for the environment, hurricane relief, emerging technologies, and the fight to protect the health and safety of his constituents. He currently serves on the House Committee on Energy and Commerce and the House Committee on Agriculture. He, too, has been a strong supporter of the Congressional Caucus for Modeling and Simulation and has been a member of the caucus nearly since its inception. Sir, welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thank you so much. First of all, welcome all of you to Central Florida. I hope you have an amazing experience here. Well, at least your family members, while you'll all be working with us. We take very seriously hospitality and want to make sure that each of your families have a great experience while you're here, and we're able to make memories for you. Many people know about tourism here, but as has been alluded to several times, we're also thrilled to have an amazing simulation and training cluster right here, along with our partners at UCF who do amazing work, along with many other local contractors. We're talking about tens of thousands of jobs here in Central Florida, some of the most high paying, and we're real proud about that. We also have a lot of synergy with the simulation and training industry. When you think about Imagineers at Disney or Universal, when you think about EA Sports, and we make Madden football and college football here, don't worry, we'll be able to simulate that Michigan-Ohio game over and over and over on college football.
With a different outcome, sir.
Yes, absolutely. Well, for those who want it. At EA Sports, and we also work on digital twins here that we're using for everything from factories to medicine and you name it. So we're thrilled about all that. We also have obviously a huge defense industry, whether it's aerospace, whether it's commercial rockets or NASA over at the Cape. And so we're really proud of the work that's being done here. We know that the budget is kind of up in the air, right? When we look at over this next month, we could be facing another continuing resolution plus. And so we're hoping that some of these key issues, whether it's simulation training or hurricane relief or other things that our state is closely monitoring, that we're able to bring that in for a landing. We know these challenges, whether it's in Eastern Europe, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's in East Asia, pose a myriad of challenges, and our industry will need to continue to adapt to those. Thank you for what you do to help protect the warfighter, to help prepare. We also know there could be some challenges ahead with some discussing potential cuts to the defense budget or to veterans care, and so this presents an opportunity to help save money through the simulation training field. It also is going to mean that we're going to have to stand together to make sure that we have a budget that is going to help defend the homeland and make sure that we're going forward going to be able to do everything we can to help with various industries around here, and of course to protect our men and women in uniform. So welcome. Thank you all for being here. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you, sir. We are supposed to have a fifth panelist, Congressman Maxwell Frost. He had a little bit of an issue on Interstate 4 here in Orlando this morning. We understand he's inbound, so we'll be a little bit flexible, and if he's able to join us this morning while we're talking in stride, I'll pause for a moment. I'll give an introduction to him, and then we'll continue with the questions and the answers. You all did very well, thank you. I've got a nice collection of questions from you. I'm going to prime the pump with the panelists with a question of my own. Kind of continues on a conversation we were fortunate enough to have last night at dinner about artificial intelligence. So, gentlemen, this is addressed to all of you all as you'd like to dialogue about it. So my organization, the National Training and Simulation Association, hosts an annual leadership summit on behalf of the Caucus. This year it's going to be in February, Congressman Rutherford, in your district in Jax on February 10th. We've chosen the topic to discuss at that leadership summit of artificial intelligence, and specifically as it applies within the world of modeling, simulation, and training, all in support of a focus on national security. Artificial intelligence is surely a topic that's evoked many opinions thus far, and we're aware that there is some legislation relative to AI in specific areas that has already been proposed and or passed. Gentlemen, what are the benefits and the concerns about AI, and how can legislation support its effective and safe application?
Well, I will say I think AI, particularly in the field of modeling and training and simulation, is probably the one area where I'm least concerned about AI going off the rails because it's so constrained in the application to provide faster service, more precise service. You know, for example, when I went to Mass Virtual, and they were taking pieces and measurements and applying them and then putting it into the virtual field. That could be done so much faster with AI capability. And so I see it in this world is much more in a positive light than I do in some of the other areas where you may see AI take off.
Yeah, well, we all want to enjoy that optimism that it'll be used for humanity in so many good ways.
Right.
But we also have to have some type of focus and concern on the nefarious use of it. Right. And that's where you gentlemen might come into play up on the Hill as far as creating right and left boundaries, maybe, and regulating it. Sir?
Well, I don't think you're regulating AI, you're regulating the use of AI and what you're using it for. AI is a tool. And you look at what you're using it for, and if you're committing a crime using AI, you prosecute the crime. If it's creating some results that are not desirable, like if you're using it to hire people or to award contracts and the algorithm comes out in a discriminatory fashion, you want to deal with the discrimination. The AI itself, trying to regulate that, I don't think is the problem. It's as you use this tool, what are the results that you're getting? What are you using it for? And if you're using it for something nefarious, then you should prosecute the nefarious use. But there are a lot of areas where employment discrimination being one, where people are saying, well, I didn't discriminate, I just bought the off-the-shelf program, and these are the results. And I just followed what they said. Well, if it's a discriminatory pattern, that's not an excuse. So we need to look at AI as a tool and regulate what you're doing with it, not so much AI itself.
Thank you.
I would suggest to you that, you know, no matter what the issue is that crosses the desk in our office, my team and I ask ourselves the same question in every issue is there a role for the federal government in this issue? If there is, we get involved. In some cases, there's not. But in the general, I think the general scheme of the role of federal government, along with creating the environment where innovation can thrive, is to create the necessary, in every subject, guardrails and guidelines to ensure that, especially when you're trying something new, that you know when to stop because you're at an edge that you know you're not there. Again, the guardrail, okay? But federal government has to first realize that it does not have all the answers, okay? And as soon as we realize that, we're going to be better at the governmental level, at the federal side. And I'm very comfortable with the folks I'm sitting here with that we can discuss pretty much anything. We may have different viewpoints, but we can come together somewhere to agree on, again, guidelines and guardrails to allow you to do what you're going to do.
Let's start by defining AI, right? Supercomputers that mimic reason using vast amounts of data, whether it's the internet, whether it is social media. And so sometimes it could be very quick and surprisingly right, and sometimes it could be absolutely wrong. So I would warn your kids from using AI to do their book reports, or else they may see some striking errors in it. In the terms of simulation training, we could see, first of all, using digital twins war game simulations that become more efficient to protect our forces, to do things in innovative ways that then can affect and make us more successful in the battlefield or in defense, as an example of how AI can help work. The artificial intelligence, the subject actually goes through our committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee, and then there's a select committee. There's also an executive order and regulations being proposed by the Biden administration. We know some of that may be at least educational, as we see the Trump administration coming in, but we'll start with executive branch orders and then eventually some guardrails, as General Bergman was mentioning. But it's been slow going because a lot of folks, they don't understand it. It's scary. Where you can see disruptions is in a lot of white collar, a lot of professional services, a lot of different areas where it's knowledge-based in the simulation and training industry, where you need less computer programmers or less designers or any number of other issues. While you're still going to need a welder to weld that machine together, you're still going to need folks to put components together. But you could see a lot of different shakeup. Now, that does create other opportunities in other areas. The last thing I'll say is AI requires a huge amount of power. And so you'll see some of the solutions that have been coming forward are everything from modular nuclear, which I know a lot of our Navy service members and veterans know about better than anybody. And so these are going to be the major challenges as we go forward. But I think overall it'll make us more efficient and allow us to be more accurate in how we defend the nation. But we need to be guarded because AI sometimes gets it way wrong. At the end of the day, it's only as good as the underlying data it's utilizing to help us and guide us in these decisions.
Thank you, sir. This is a question for any of you all. This is our first question from the audience. Given the new administration, do you see continued advocacy for modeling and simulation as an enabler for the country? If so, what are the key opportunities? If not, what should we in the modeling and simulation community do to better position ourselves? Go ahead, sir.
I'll say yes. I could end it there, but I'll say that when you in a change of administrations, there in many cases hope and optimism that change that was stifled before. Now, you notice I'm not referring to one or another because it can occur Democrat to Republican, Republican to Democrat, doesn't make any difference. But I think there's an optimism that new people coming in who are going to be in charge of decision making within an administration will try to do the right thing for the right reason, regardless of a party affiliation. The challenge that we have sitting here is the idea of creating the environment of innovation without over-regulation. And there's a subtlety to that comment, because you all are going to have to the 90th percentile the best answers because you're working it every day. The question is, how do you get your good ideas heard at the federal government level? And so I'm very optimistic of a rollback or reduction of unnecessary regulations in this next administration.
Okay.
Well, let me just say that I'll let my Republican colleagues talk for the upcoming administration, but there's nothing the administration can do to restrain you from continuing the innovation that you're already doing. So I just encourage people to continue what they're doing.
Listen, I will tell you, I think this administration is going to be very pro-AI development in the fields that you all are in and others. Because, you know, I believe sometimes when people hear former President Trump talk about America first, they somehow think that that's America alone. It's not the same thing. America first, I tell folks it's kind of like the instructions they give you on the airplane. You know, when the oxygen masks drop down, what do? You put the mask on yourself first, and then you help your child. But you put yours on first. And that's what I think President Trump is talking about when he says America first. America cannot help the rest of the world if we are not first economically, first militarily, and first diplomatically. And we also can't be first on Earth if we're second in space. That was, I heard that the other day, and I think that is so true. And so AI is going to open up real possibilities for us to catch up in areas that quite frankly, I think we're lagging, like space, behind some of our peer adversaries like China. And so I think it's going to be very important, and I think the president understands that, and he wants America to be strong. So it's America first so that we can help the rest of the world develop and have the freedoms and the economy that the world needs to move forward.
Good, thank you, sir.
So we all know we have a huge deficit right now, $1.8 trillion for this year, and a huge debt of over $36 trillion. And there are some proposed efficiencies, cuts, whatever you want to call it, going into next year, especially with the defense budget, which is half the discretionary budget. We have a couple of appropriators here who could go into it at length. It does present opportunities for this area because you all provide efficiencies. You all help save money. You save us from having to crash a fighter jet or a helicopter, or helping with making sure our nuclear subs are run right by the training that people get in advance. So I think there's going to be more arguments for you all to make that different areas can be brought into the virtual sphere, can be brought into simulation and training. And so I think there's going to be some opportunities here. I do like some of the movement in space, as my fellow Floridian talked about. You know, we get to see rockets launch in our backyard twice a week around here. And so there may be additional functions to help with the space effort around here. But I do think a lot of you may be part of efficiencies that'll be proposed. And so I'd be looking into different areas that haven't embraced simulation training and defense so far, and look at those as potential growth opportunities.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, this is a question for all of you all as representatives in the House. Prior to the election, I believe you all had about 17 to 19 members of the M&S Caucus. I'm not sure where we stand right now with who remained in office and who did not. But the audience who wrote this question says, what mechanisms or processes do you all utilize to include or invite other congressional and Senate leaders who are not a part of your modeling and simulation caucus to support the legislation that you're proposing?
Well, it's all about relationships. And when you see people, let's say you're watching C-SPAN and we're all on the House floor, we're having votes, and you'll see a lot of conversations going on among people. You know, it could be Democrat and Democrat, Republican, Republican, but most likely in a lot of cases it's going to be Democrats and Republicans just talking together. It's about relationships that when you have a good idea and you meet, I mean, let's face it, right here you got Darren and John and I all came in together as the freshman class of the 115th Congress, and we had a great class. I mean, I still have pictures of us in Williamsburg, Virginia, in the middle of a snowstorm. That during our retreat we got snowed in, but it forced us maybe to get to know one another a little better. The point is, it's through those personal relationships that you encourage members as you get to meet them, especially freshmen coming in, find out what their interests are, and say, hey. And oh, by the way, it doesn't hurt to have free beer, every once in a while, after votes to say, free beer at my place, compliments to the Modeling and Simulation Caucus.
Just locally, we're blessed to have an amazing industry here, and so we do work together quite a bit. Both Maxwell Frost, who has joined us now, Corey Mills, welcome, Dan Webster, Bill Posey, now Rep-elect Haridopoulos, and others on various initiatives that plus up everything from digital twin technology in the budget to ensuring simulation training at all the different branches. Now we're looking at, of course, space, which was discussed before, Department of Energy, Veterans Affairs, among others. And so locally, we do our best to stay together to advance our both local initiatives and then sign up for the various simulation training caucuses priorities as well. So we are pleased to be collaborative here in Central Florida and work on a lot of the issues, knowing how important it is to the region.
Let me just say, in addition to all of that, I think the most effective way to get somebody in the caucus is to have someone from their district suggest that they join the caucus.
Hear, hear.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Yeah.
I agree.
Good point, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be agile here, and I'd like to formally introduce and welcome our last panelist. Sir, welcome. We're glad you're here. Thank you for making that effort through this morning's issues to get here. Our last guest is new to the House of Representatives, just completing his first term. Congressman Maxwell Frost is the first member of Generation Z to be elected to Congress and is proud to represent the people of Central Florida, where his district borders us here in Orlando to the north. As a former organizer, musician, and community activist, Frost was inspired to get to work at 15 years of age after the tragic mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary claimed the lives of 26 innocent people. In 2016, after years of organizing and advocacy work, Frost himself became a survivor of gun violence after witnessing a shooting in downtown Orlando. In Congress, Frost is committed to representing the people of his hometown in Orlando and Central Florida with a focus on housing affordability, health care, abortion rights, LGBTQ+ rights, voting rights, transportation, justice reform, and climate change. For his first visit to Itzik, please join me in welcoming Congressman Maxwell Frost. Sir, what we've done is we solicited questions from the audience, and I have them in my hand here, and some of them are directed to a particular member, a particular panelist, and some are open game for all of you all. So we're glad to have you up on the stage. This one is for the entire panel. Does Congress have a desire for, quote, general purpose modeling and simulation? Specifically, what I mean is to use modeling and simulation to inform an approach to governing, legislation, and budget making.
Yeah, I would say yes. And we've been able to get directives in many bills to just to that point. In transportation bills, we used to do it by amendment. Now they've gotten tired of amendments and just put it in there to begin with, that the use of modeling and simulation to the greatest degree practicable is expected and directed to make sure that the projects are designed properly, can save money, save lives, and in every bill that comes across our desk, we look for opportunities to inject modeling and simulation, and have had very little resistance.
Very good. Okay.
I would suggest, just very quickly, that I agree with what Bobby said. We have to be careful, though, any lawyers in the crowd here? You don't count, Darren. You're a member of Congress. You're already, The point is we have to be very careful when we're drafting legislation that we don't get too much legalese in it. And that's a challenge that we all have, and to be too prescriptive. But the point is, to your question, the answer to your question is yes.
Very well. Given the rapid advancement of tech, how can the caucus ensure or oversee that K through 12 and university curriculums are agile enough to keep up with the demands of industry in the area of AI, machine learning, or virtual reality?
That's difficult with our insistence that the federal government not inject itself into curriculum. That our role is to fund, to the extent that we want to, certain parts of education, particularly students with disabilities, low-income students, things of that nature, trying to encourage closing achievement gaps. But getting into curriculum is something that we, as a matter of policy, stay away from. There's no way that the federal government or Congress wants to decide how you teach history in Boston and Atlanta. We let Boston take care of it, we'd let Atlanta take care of it, but we're not going to inject ourselves in that debate.
Listen, I agree with Bobby on that point, and I will tell you, I went to an Arlington Middle School in Jacksonville, Florida, and watched the launch of I think it was a shuttle. And what was interesting was there was no launch, but all of the data from a previous launch was being fed electronically somehow to the school, Arlington Middle School. They had developed this program. And these kids in middle school are, and I don't know if there's any NASA folks out here that know about this, but it's an amazing program that they provide. And you have people working on health issues, the bio, whatever's going on with the astronauts inside the shuttle. You've got fuel loading, you've got, all this stuff. I mean, it was amazing to watch. And these kids are learning through doing. And that's the kind of opportunity that having the individual abilities to exercise, I think, is important to each and every school district. If you want those things in your district, go make it happen.
Something else I'd add too is, and I agree with Bobby, I mean, even though we're not here to directly put things in the curriculum, a lot of these investments that our government has made over the last several years into the industry as a whole and into STEM as a whole doesn't exist within a vacuum, and oftentimes encourages school districts, schools, outside organizations to level up the work they're doing so that way their students are competitive in being able to have these type of jobs. I mean, just look at what's going on here in Central Florida. Number one, UCF is the top school in the nation for modeling and simulation. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. I'm sure Darren will talk a little bit about Neo City and Neo City Academy, a school that is built essentially on making sure that students are competitive in these type of jobs. And we need this type of stuff now more than ever because of the investments that we're seeing. An example being the Chips and Science Act and different things like that. We've seen massive investment come to Central Florida, and it's why the industry is booming here, but again, not just in a vacuum. The ways that the school districts, schools, outside organizations are looking at their programs and how their students can get into this pipeline, that's extending as well. I used to be in an organization when I was in high school called TSA. Not TSA as in the airport TSA, but Technology Student Association. I competed at the national level, brought home some trophies. But that program, I was speaking with some folks who help run that as well, and they have seen a massive boom in a lot of the students who want to be involved in that. And because of that, they're going out looking for more resources to make sure that their students can be competitive in the workplace. So again, I think although we're not here to write in the curriculum what needs to happen, naturally, as our government invest more resources into the industry as a whole, if we do it in the right way, again, these investments don't exist within a vacuum and really go down to our students as well.
Can I make another comment? As the representative of the other best school in the nation on modeling and simulation, Old Dominion University, Virginia Modeling and Analysis and Simulation Center, VMASC, I just wanted to point out that the last time that we did Elementary and Secondary Education Act, upgrading No Child Left Behind, we wanted to upgrade the standards. And the best we could do was that if you get a high school diploma, you should be able to get into a state college without remediation. That's the best we could do to upgrade standards in terms of high school without getting into curriculum.
Very well.
Jack,
No,
please.
go ahead, Derek.
So we're doing 4 specific things in Central Florida, many of which are helped through funding through the federal government. First, STEM-focused high schools. Second, public-private partnerships. Third, industry advisory boards. These are some of the big things that have been working very well for us here. So first of all, we have, as Representative Frost had alluded to, magnet schools that are focused, one on STEM, another on the arts in Osceola County. In fact, Maxwell is an illustrious graduate of the Osceola School of the Arts, and so those programs from high school on are encouraging kids who want to go into STEM to have a high school specifically to help cultivate that. Helping with internships, absolutely key. There's a lot of folks who intern at various of the different major defense firms or smaller firms who are going through high school here in Central Florida, and many more as they're going through in UCF. So that's something specifically organizations can do, is make sure you're working with your local universities to create internships, because you learn the theory in the universities, but you learn a lot of the application through hands-on through these internships. Then public-private partnerships also key. We have several high schools in and around the district where local major defense firms invest in high schools. I had Timber Creek, now Timber Creek's in Representative Frost's district. They have a flight simulator from Lockheed Martin, and kids are getting 1/2 of their flight training and testing done before they graduate from high school. Because of that, they also have a really sweet robotics program there as well. And then lastly, business advisory committees, which have worked real well at UCF, where their local captains of industry are letting the university know what their needs are, along with Valencia, which does amazing work. And they literally help create the training programs based upon that advice, so that you have a student who knows how Boeing likes to have what's going to be key for them to be ready when they get into a job, or Lockheed Martin or some of these other major firms, and some of the smaller ones as well. So there are many things we could do, but a lot of them are funding, and some of them are you all stepping up to work with our local universities, our local community colleges, and our local high schools.
By the way, I'd like to, unless somebody else, I'd like to close out this question. This is a great question. Whoever asked that, thank you. I had one note to say today, because that input was from my daughter, who is the career elementary teacher and spent 20 years in the classroom and roughly 10 years working for the University of Illinois, mentoring and evaluating the men and women going into elementary teaching. So basically, her phrase is back to basics in the K through 12. In other words, depending on the age, if we don't get back to the initial development of the reading, the writing, all of the things that go along with child development, and then age appropriate as children move forward, introduce the new technologies, but take it out of the brain, put it into the body. We know that there are only certain ages, let's say 6 through 10, where if you don't get outside and the muscular skeletal development, if you don't do certain things at certain ages, your chances of the physical development of your strength and all of that are diminished. That's real. So think about the brain as a muscle. Same thing, let's get the basics, let's get these students, and then naturally they're going to seek the paths that are put before them with new techniques in modeling and simulation and different school opportunities. That's our future. But don't forget that we all need to start somewhere, and then life just kind of moves on based on the things that God gave us as far as our priorities and our capabilities, and it's different for all of us. But the commonality is we're all God's creatures.
Thank you, sir. Representative Rutherford, this is directed to you initially. Do you have any thoughts on the ways that the Department of Homeland Security can expand the use of modeling and simulation for training, wargaming, and decision-making in such a diverse mission set as that department has?
Yeah, listen, I think there are all sorts of opportunities for modeling and simulation in the world of Homeland Security. As I mentioned earlier, as a law enforcement officer, a lot of those Homeland Security agencies are gun toters, and just that simple task of carrying a gun and being able to use it with proficiency, that's one thing. But the other issue is making those decisions, those don't shoot decisions. Modeling and simulation has come so much further. If you saw the old FATS machine that we were familiar with, and now you see I think they call it 280 or something like that. It's almost it circles around them now. And so that they have threats coming from every direction. So there are a lot of different applications. Driving is another. Almost all of your high liability training areas, maybe not so much in criminal law, but probably even there. But driving, firearms, and first responder medical training. Also another area where tremendous opportunities for modeling and simulation training. And not to mention all the different systems that are being used, for example, on the border, flying drones, and yes, it touches. I don't think there's a field that it doesn't touch.
Sir, thank you. Representative Bergman, as a pilot in the United States Marine Corps, you're aware that every military aircraft for the past 40 years or more has been fielded with pilot training simulators. Yet no military ground vehicles are fielded concurrently with driver training since, I'm not able to read this word. Will Congress support requiring the military services to fully fund driver training simulators with ground tactical vehicles and combat vehicles? GAO Report 21 TAC 361 identified ground vehicle rollovers as the leading cause of training deaths and injuries.
Well, that's one of those questions that when I ask, is there a role for the federal government in this decision? Again, as an airline pilot, but as a military pilot too, but especially is safety first, safety second, safety third. And I hadn't thought about a congressional role in my word now, mandate this. I tend to let the services, in this case, let's keep it into the military, decide on their training. But I would suggest to you that because safety and risk are tied together, but in the end, what we do in the military and how we drive defies all safety rules and regulations. And that's a long way of saying whoever asked the question, I'll be more than happy after we're done here to spend a couple of minutes and have a further dialogue, because I could talk about it. I could give you this reason to do it, this reason to not do it. But again, what is the role of the Congress? Let's come up to me afterwards, and we'll continue the dialogue, because I don't have a yes or no, will I do it or not. It's let's refine it, define it a little more as to what you're trying to achieve with your question, and is there a role for Congress at that level?
Congressman Scott and Rutherford, you all both also have a very big presence of ground troops in your respective districts. Is there anything else to add to that?
I would think that would be something you'd want to look at, but as Jack just said, that has to be looked at an individual level. It's hard to believe that you couldn't benefit by modeling and simulation, learning truck driving.
Can I just close with one? For example, as an airline pilot, and the military was slow to take on simulation for training pilots, the commercial aviation industry jumped on it early on. I'm qualified commercially in an aircraft before I even set foot in that aircraft, because I passed my simulator check ride to get my rating, okay? But that doesn't mean I go out and fly the airplane the next day on my own. After you pass your check ride, then you go out on IOE, initial operational experience. So you're the captain, but you're with a check captain. So the idea is you still have to be able to operate in the environment outside the simulator and mesh the two together.
Thank you. Gentlemen, ITSEC attendees include nearly 2,000 of our international and coalition partners. Some of these professionals are in the audience this morning. They look to us, the United States, for support and leadership on the world stage. Do you have any messages for them as we find new ways to collaborate with our allied treaty partners and partner nations?
Go ahead, Derek. No, your turn. You just got a new did you get a new battery in that?
Absolutely.
Good. Oh, you're ready to go.
Well, we know there are a lot of new challenges out there. Drones were alluded to, cybersecurity. I'd be looking at how both society and warfare continues to change as some of the big opportunities going forward. And we look forward to some of the innovative things that you all will be doing.
Can I throw one out there? I think this is a fundamental question that we have to ask ourselves as a country. Here's the question. Is the United States a maritime nation or not? Okay. We know the answer is we have to be. We don't have a choice. We have to be a maritime nation. But the maritime nature of our existence now, where our seas, our oceans protected us, now they become potential fields of disruption, whether it be commercial disruption, whatever it happens to be. So when you take the role that we have in the world, and I'm keep it in the maritime perspective here for a very brief time, we know that our ability to build ships, repair ships, way behind. When are we going to start, partnering with the likes of South Korea, Finland, Sweden? Pick your Nordic countries up there. So when you think of advancing first of all, I think our diplomatic relations, first of all, and then combined with those good diplomatic relations, hopefully create the environment where good business, if you will, discussions to be had, and advancing technologies that we need as a country. There has to be a focus. Now I know I got a little specific here, but it has to revolve around the maritime nature. We're already focused on space. We're already focused on other things. We have to get our act together. And when you think about if you're a merchant mariner, there are different simulators that are owned by the government. There are simulators that are owned by industry. And how do we create that environment where we use the technologies that you're going to bring to create the mariners of the 21st century? Okay.
That sounds like what we're doing with Australia under the Caucus agreement. Nupanu Shipbuilding in that district is helping Australia learn how to build those ships, nuclear submarines. And they're doing exactly what you said.
I would like to think too, Admiral, that, you know, operations like RIMPAC and other major operational projects like RIMPAC, for example, that those are also taking place in a virtual world, sharing that kind of information. So maybe I just assumed that it was.
As we
You can
progress and get
probably
better and
answer
better
that
with
better
our
than I can.
live, virtual, and constructive synthetic environments, we're able to bring in our partner nations much better.
Right.
And that capability is accelerating very fast. To most of us warfighters, maybe not fast enough, but pretty darn fast to where we'll be able to be so much more inclusive with our partners who have similar capability and integrated capability. So yes, sir. Representative Soto, I didn't know whether I was losing you on the stage or not. Thank you for coming back with new equipment. This question was directed toward you, sir. How committed is our government to pushing modeling and simulation to the forefront of our annual defense budget?
Well, I know it's, along with microchip manufacturing on the defense level, our two focuses here in Central Florida. Well, I should include also dealing with various components of the F-35 and other areas. We do amazing things here in Central Florida. Obviously, tens of thousands of people work in simulation and training. And so you'll see us elevate in various different agency budgets, different priorities, whether it is for each of the forces, prioritizing that simulation training be something that they continue to utilize and take a look at, to Department of Energy, to delivery of veterans affairs and healthcare. You name it, we're trying to elevate and look for different areas to elevate the simulation training cluster that we have here. In addition, bringing it up in committee. And then we have other key defense areas in Central Florida that we also use the budget through either amendments, through plussing up different categories, to delivering congressional intent that this was intended for here in Central Florida, or perhaps Virginia, or some of these other areas, as we go through the appropriations process. That's one of the biggest things that we can do. In addition, we saw, for instance, with this latest national security package to help Ukraine and in the Middle East and in Taiwan, we're making a lot of those weapons right here in Central Florida, whether it's the Hellfire missiles, whether it's the drones that are utilized, whether it's the Javelins, which were kind of antiquated, and now they're being utilized quite a bit again in the Ukraine area. And so we made sure that those areas were well represented in that appropriations special package that was going through. And then, of course, with space, that's something that we're going to continue to prioritize, commercial space flight and the expansion of it, and then microchip manufacturing, where we make aerospace microchips in Neo City. So we really have kind of four priorities. We constantly look at opportunities in the budget through intent, through amendments, and through trying to plus up different areas to help with one of our largest industries, the defense industry here in Central Florida.
Great, thank you, sir.
Could I mention another aspect of this? When I mentioned earlier, having traveled to Orlando here to see Mass Virtual and some of the other operations that were going on here, listen, when I stopped to think about this question, I think too often we get caught up with what the prime movers are talking about doing, and we forget the quick and nimble small businesses that can really make things happen as far through innovation, and then maybe the prime movers can take it to scale. But we've got to have those small businesses, and I will tell you, if you haven't already invited, all of you live in a district somewhere and operate in a district somewhere, get your representative to come tour your facility if you haven't done. How many have done that? How many have actually had a representative tour your facility? Every hand in the place ought to be going up. And so I challenge you to do that, to educate us, the other 430, you got 5 here, 430 back home, back in DC. Educate them on what's going on, even with the small business world, that not just the prime movers. So I think that's an important step that sometimes gets left out of this.
Yes, sir. Very good point. Very, very good point.
I also want to bring up, we actually recently held a roundtable, maybe a few months ago, with a ton of different small businesses that are involved in what's called the UCF Business Incubator, which is at the University of Central Florida. And they're doing a really good job of giving these small businesses the tools and resources they need to be successful in the industry. And the amount that I learned personally, my staff took away, was great, and we did it with the SBA as well. And so that's something else that I think is important, is making sure that, especially with the next administration, inviting those folks to our districts as members of Congress and being able to show them the collaboration in real time and how it works between a university, our small businesses, the military, et cetera, I think is really helpful as well, especially as we make the case in DC for money and appropriations.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, we've come to the close of our time. I'd like to thank the audience for all the questions that you generated there to create this dialogue. I thought it was rich and thought it was helpful. Hopefully, I didn't get to all of the questions, but we got through at least 2/3 of them. We're going to continue the formal events with this caucus starting in the new year on February 10th. We'll have, as I said earlier, the Leadership Summit in Jacksonville on the 10th of February. And then each summer we have an annual Capitol Hill Expo focused on modeling and simulation right, I believe, in the Russell office building, of which you all usually come down and chat with us and participate a little. And then we'll conclude with ITSEC 25 and wrap it up again with this capstone event. Gentlemen, thank you for your precious time that you gave us, leaving your respective districts, coming and talking about such an important topic to this audience. Everybody, let's give ourselves a round of applause.